Now, APCO is now going through the process of doing a project looking at whether or not the labelling scheme we're talking about here could be extended to include compostables, like working with the other organisations that are out there at the moment, but trying to merge this together. That's broadening the conversation, but it's taking it beyond compostable plastics to also work out, well, how should we manage food residue on paper products that could best be going into compost rather than landfill, as opposed to recycling and causing problems in the paper mill.
Hey guys, we're filming another episode of Think Beginning Not End's podcast we're being filming. Today we've got Anthony Peyton joining us here at the Melbourne Innovation Centre. We've rocked up, let's go and check it out. This guy's designed a tool for packaging technologists and brands on ensuring that their packaging is recyclable and works in the curbside system. So, hey. There you go.
You see, buddy?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Right, you ready to go?
Let's do it. A few ideas for that, so all right.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Think Beginning Not End. And our guest today, Anthony Peyton from Prep Design, is all about Think Beginning Not End. He's the person who's put the nuts and bolts behind the new label that we're seeing on some of our packaging, and I'm delighted to have you on board, mate, for this episode.
Fantastic, Simon. Great to be here.
Anthony, can you tell us a bit about Prep Design and where it all started and what it's all about?
Okay, cool. Well, first of all, Simon, Prep Design is a business that was set up in 2017. It includes my business Greenship, with Planet Arc, and also a group in South Australia called Innovise. So we've got this business, we own a software called PrEP. Now, PrEP stands for the Packaging Recyclability Evaluation Portal.
Okay.
But just forget that now, it's just PrEP, okay?
Yeah.
All right. But what it is, it's something we've put together over a number of years, working with Planet Arc and bringing together my knowledge of all the work I did with doing waste audits and so on, both at the generators like manufacturers and so on, in terms of waste, in terms of being generated, but also at the MRFs, and understanding how a MRF works and the downstream processes and so on. I brought together all that sort of knowledge together with Planet Arc into sort of more of a, really what I'm calling it, it's a software tool based on parameters and thresholds.
Yep.
So for instance, at council, how widely is something collected, like PET? 96% of the population, and you have a minimum type thing. And also the technical side, how small is too small? 50 millimetres for plastic.
Yep.
So it's all that parameter threshold model.
So the body of your work really starts with the packaging design.
That's exactly what it's for. So this whole process of developing this tool we call PrEP is for the packaging designers, because they're very confused. In the past, if they're putting something on the marketplace and their boss says, can you put something that's recyclable, they wouldn't really know where to start. They might think, okay, it's got made of PET, but really sometimes it's whether the label's compatible with it, or the size or the shape. A lot of factors there that they're confused about. So that's what the PrEP does, is it helps the packaging designers and the brand owners to reduce the confusion at the design stage whether something is recyclable or not.
So the good thing to consider here is we've got consumers who are confused about what to do with it.
Yep.
And then the PrEP tool is helping the actual packaging manufacturers remove some of that confusion for the product.
Yeah,
for the products that they're making, right?
That's right. And you touched on the consumer there, Simon, because back in 2010 and 2013, there was a lot of work done about putting an on-pack label.
Yep.
To work out how to tell consumers what to do with the packaging. Now, there's a lot of debate went on that period, because what they couldn't agree on was an underpinning methodology. And that's what the PrEP did. So the PrEP ended up coming first. And then 6 months later, with Planet Arc, and also with Officeworks as the first company, designed the on-pack labelling, which has now become the Australasian recycling label that APCO manages as part of all their membership. So there's been a bit of a history there over the last few years, but it's interesting how in the UK, as a contrast, they put an on-pack labelling scheme in place in 2009 called the OPRL, or On-Pack Recycling Label, set up by RAP. And that's that was the world first.
Yeah.
And now we have an arrangement now with OPRL with the PrEP underpinning that label. So in the UK, the label came first, the PrEP came second to underpin it. Whereas in Australia, the PrEP came first and the label came second. But they both help each other out.
And what are like some of the challenges that you've seen in getting this system up and running?
Well, look, I think it's just that the complexity. I think in the past, when it comes to, even with consumers, you do the best with what you've got. And in councils in the past, the best they've got might have been put everything in the recycling bin that's either 1 to 6, or it's made of glass, or it's made of paper or something. Really simple stuff. And even then you get to a point of saying, it's almost like a list of things. Should a pizza box be in, or should a pizza box be out? Should a coffee cup? So what, it gets almost like looking at these things. So by going away from a list of items to a parameter threshold model, it just cuts away from that. It doesn't say, is it a cup or whatever. It's saying, what's it made from? Is it going to behave in that recycling ecosystem in Australia, for instance, or New Zealand?
Yep.
And that complexity then is what we're looking for. We're trying to reflect that complexity back to the brand owners in a very simple way, so they can know what happens to packaging after it goes in the curbside bin for the consumer.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we see as a buyer of some of these commodities. I can already see that this new labelling and the new approach from the packaging designers will hopefully increase the value of those streams as they come out of those MRFs as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing. And over the journey that I've been on, one of the things has been a bit of a debate about who's the beneficiary here. And the brand owners like it because they've got a streamlined process of designing packages. They benefit in that way. But it's the recyclers who win at the end of the day, because if the consumers do the right thing and the labelling shows the right way, like in your case, Simon, you're still going to start seeing a cleaner stream come through.
Yeah.
So it won't necessarily going to be a magic bullet. No one's saying that. But it should help the process. And as we know with the whole China crisis and so on last year, and all the stuff that was going through locally with contamination, there's a lot of work to be done. But sometimes it's the confusion.
Yep.
Like people might want to do the right thing. Also the thing about like wish cycling, like wish is recyclable.
Yeah.
That causes more problems than it's worth. I mean, it should be, if you're in doubt, leave it out.
Yes, agreed.
So we're trying to sort of streamline things at the consumer side with the label, but then also, as you say, back at the start, streamline and standardise things at the packaging design stage.
Yeah. Was the take up or the attitude towards it slow, or did you see like brand owners were engaged in it at the start?
Well, once again, this journey I've been on, Simon. So initially, there was a period between 2014 and 2017. We were knocking door to door, saying, "Come on, jump on board and get behind this program." And it was the leading organisations. So Nestle comes on board early, and Officeworks comes on board early, and Blackmore. So you've got these leading organisations that want to do the right thing. But it wasn't until we then came to arrangement with the Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation at the start of last year, where now the PrEP software and the ARL is available to the members of APCO at no cost.
Yeah. So
all of a sudden now in the last 18 months, it's gone from having 20 organisations to 250 organisations on board.
Wow, that's a big number. Yeah.
It's gone nuts, because the thing is that people can see both at the brand owner level, they can see what's happening, and they can see there's a standardisation here for the industry, and they've come on board, which is fantastic.
And what about from the recycling industry, and I'll put some context around that, from the processing side of it?
Yeah.
What kind of feedback have you got around that so far?
Well, what we've done there, Simon, is we've got APCO's put together a what's called the Technical Advisory Committee.
Yep. And
what's the beauty of that is we've got a group of people who are from different parts of the supply chain. You've got the packaging designers, you've got recyclers, you've got state government through South Australia with Vaughan Levitsky, for instance, and you've got different players in the packaging manufacturers as well as brand owners. So you've got quite a good mix of people. Plus you've got packaging technologists who have been designing packaging. They know the real intricacies of why a packaging is designed a certain way. So it might be a laminator, it might be for improving shelf life. And what we're trying to also do is have that balance between the needs of the packaging designers to still reduce food loss and whatever, but also the needs of the recyclers to end up with a clean stream. And so that sometimes, in terms of some of the problems, it's that sort of tension between something that's not as recyclable as it could be, but it achieves like food savings, for instance. And so there's a bit of a tension there, but that's the good thing about having a committee where you can throw all these ideas around saying, what should be the consensus then? As a result of that discussion, how should we arrive at something that keeps everyone happy?
Yeah, it's something that I come across all the time is, I talk a lot to people about the safe delivery of food is a big part of packaging. Like, we want to reduce packaging and make better decisions, but we can't forget that safe delivery of the food that we all enjoy is a big part of that. Yeah, well as food loss, right?
That's right. I mean, you did the cucumber one, didn't you, on one of your videos?
Yeah.
That was this exact classic example of how the role of packaging is to protect the product.
Yeah.
It's not there to make litter.
Yeah.
It has a purpose. And so that's the sort of thing with coming about. You don't want to be seen to be necessarily accused of greenwashing the industry, because some people might claim that because they might say reuse is better than recycling, and they're right.
Yep.
So in Germany, they've got situations where they've got reuse schemes and they're washing bottles rather than recycling bottles. And I get that. But I think there's still that waste hierarchy is there for a reason. That whole process of preventing and then reusing and then recycling and then down you go. I think sometimes I get, even I'm to blame as well, that sometimes you get in this debate about different parts are better than others. So it becomes like a judgmental thing across this waste hierarchy.
Yeah.
And I think that we have got to take a bit of a deep breath sometimes, because there's every part of that supply, that hierarchy has a role to play. You'll always have residues, or you'll always have some products that are well placed to be in the reusable space, like even transport packaging as an example, or refills in some of these special retail stores. I just feel we'll end up with a bit of a pattern of things. We'll have a bit of a patch quilt type scenario where some things are out there that are compostable, some things because they're in a closed loop situation, others recyclable, others reusable, others are sort of no packaging. I think we need a combination.
And what about before we came into the podcast, we were talking about on a national level, we've got container deposit scheme, we've got curbside. Both those systems probably need to work together somehow.
Yeah.
And we kind of touched on there is some confusion there at times. What are your thoughts on that, of how curbside and container deposit need to work next to each other?
Yeah, I think this is a situation where the consumer has to go along for the ride and become a bit more sophisticated, because let's say you're on holidays. In Victoria, there's no CDS. You go to Queensland or New South Wales on holidays. Does that mean you should throw away your packaging in Queensland as you would in Victoria? Well, maybe not. You've got to adapt to the context. So when you're travelling, you should, and even the variations between the Queensland system where you put the bottles in a bag and you drop it off in a sort of a drop-off point. It doesn't matter what the form of the bottle is. Whereas in New South Wales, you make sure you don't crush the bottle, because when you put it through the automated hole, you make it your 10 cents.
So has that caused you some issues? Or, do you think it's caused the industry some issues on getting even, like, say, the labelling on that quite right?
Yeah, it has, Simon, because one of the things when we first came out with the on-pack labelling scheme is this, and still not quite right in terms of coming to a consensus about whether or not you put a cap on or cap off, or whether you crush it or you don't crush it. And we're still on that conversation. And this thing about CDS even makes it more complex, because, as I said before, the form of the bottle, when you discard it for your 10 cents recovery, is different in New South Wales than it is in Queensland. And then you go to curbside, one council might say one thing, and then you go to another state and they say something completely different. So I think we'll get to a point where we'll achieve some level of consensus, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the same thing will apply everywhere. I think this level of sophistication has to be accepted by the consumers to say, if I'm at curbside, there may be rules. I think that consumers have to be at least adaptable to some of those variations, but over time we'll get to some level of harmonisation, but not fully.
Yeah, I even see it between like regional areas and metropolitan areas. There will be variations in the services that are available in regional areas versus metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
Some of the services aren't as accessible, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. It may not be one size fits all. There'll be some small variations in this.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, Simon, with the fact that the Australasian Recycling Label covers Australia and New Zealand, and we've got this threshold called check locally. So it might be that a certain percentage of the population it's between say, in New Zealand it's between 50% and 80% of the population. In Australia it's 60, 80. I mean, it's this threshold thing I'm talking about. It's just saying that item is not collected everywhere.
Yeah.
And the labelling on the packaging will say check locally. So that's an example of where you get your council and you might be in a remote area. Once again, check locally. People say that's a bit confusing. Where do I check? All right, well, maybe check the underside of your bin to see if it's on there. Maybe check the council website.
Yeah.
So you will have variations, and it's also, as we know, things are changing over time. And when the China thing comes in, all of a sudden we have this contamination thing, or your industry in terms of some materials being problematic to you, we'll get pushed back from your industry saying, we don't want this anymore. Now, we can make a change to the PrEP, we can make a change through the tax system, the Technical Advisory Committee, and through to the Planet Arc program with the labelling scheme the brand owners use. We can do that pretty quickly. Quicker than all councils will go and change the stickers on their bins, or all councils will go and change the website in terms of what can go at curbside. So I think we're going to have this ongoing delay factor where a change something might come out on the labelling. We've got some examples here in front of us.
Yep.
Where you can see, like this example here, where you've got, you've got two items of packaging, say you've got the tray and the film. So it would have been a tray with a film on the top.
Yep.
And there's two symbols there.
Yeah.
Now, that symbol is saying what we consider is suitable for the current situation in terms of the recycling system in Australia.
Yep.
But if markets change all of a sudden now, this material is not recyclable, we might end up with a symbol on here saying not recyclable, but the council still says number 5, for instance.
Yep.
Number 5 will always recyclable, not a good example. But I think we need to, that's what I'm saying about this, the need for the consumers to go for the ride with us and almost be patient on an ongoing basis, that there'll be differences between what councils will say on their bins and what the label says. It's not saying that neither are right or wrong, it's just saying that we've got to try and work out a way to harmonise over time.
Yeah, I've spoken a bit about that recently, that a lot of groups are saying, we need a carrot and stick approach, right? But what you're saying, I'm with you on this, it's a journey and everyone has to come on that journey.
Yeah.
And, like the trays are a good example. I think we did another video on these demonstrating the ease of following the labelling. That you peel the film off and that goes in the bin. The tray is recyclable, and in the one I had, I think it had a cardboard sleeve on it, which even said that was recyclable.
Yeah.
So, like, just putting my consumer hat on, I found that really easy to use, and definitely bringing everyone on the journey as opposed to the carrot and stick.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to kind of get on the same train here, right?
But that, given that we're in grand final week as well, I mean the AFL things, don't think, just do.
Yeah,
that's the sort of thing. It's just look at it and say, well, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like another good one we've got here, and I think my kids have taken out that.
It's on this side.
Yeah. So again, you've got the carton recyclable, and then the bag that's got the Nutrigrain in it. Take it back to Red Cycle.
That's right.
And it's recyclable either Coles or Woolworths.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with the Red Cycle program. That's becoming more prominent in terms of the awareness.
Yep. And
it's a bit like the habit where you take your old reusable bags rather than expect the shopping bag. It's just a habit. If you have a bag for your bags, for your bread bags and your frozen pea bags and all the bits and pieces that might come through, they can then go in to this system. But what we're also making sure of with this, through the APCO program with Red Cycle, is that the brand owners who are putting that on make sure the laminates are suitable for the system.
Yeah, that's a really big topic, like especially for us. Like if we're buying films, you're always inspecting for laminates. Yeah. So obviously you're trying to address that on the front end again.
Once again, start at the beginning. I mean, that's the sort of thing where, and for instance, what in the Red Cycle system, they don't want biodegradable bags or compostable bags. Now, sometimes it's hard to know the difference, and a few getting through, they'll accommodate it, but they're the sort of things that cause problems in your industry at the next point to say, how am I going to make use of this recovered resource?
Yeah. Hey, that's another good topic. I don't want to get into it too much, but, the whole biodegradable bag space versus, do you think we're in danger of, giving consumers, how am I trying to say this? Maybe we've got too many products for consumers to make choices about, because, as a plastic person, I find it hard sometimes differentiating between a a HDPE bag and a biodegradable bag, like the consumer's got to make that decision next. Like, how tricky is that, do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I suppose that discussion was more important a few years ago when we had the shopping bags. There's less now, so it's probably now more in the space of situations, something like when you go dry cleaning, you get a bag for the dry cleaning. Some of those are, they say, biodegradable. You think, what's the benefit of that being biodegradable? And you think, well, is that a litter item? Probably not. You're not going to take your dry cleaning off in the park. I mean, I think that it depends on how it's going to be used. And I think that distinction should be made between products that will be consumed away from home versus products that are consumed in the home, for sure. Because if you're talking about definitely a throwaway situation away from home, I think that's the place where maybe there's a benefit. Like, for instance, a ice cream wrapper that might be a high probability of being littered.
Yep.
Maybe there's an argument there because you're talking about a marine environment. Now, there's a distinction also between, as you know, Simon, biodegradables and compostables and oxo biodegradables and all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's complex.
It does become complex. And that's coming back to starting at the beginning. The designers who select the materials, they're going to make sure, what is the context again? Is it away from home or is it in the home? If it's away from home, you want to make sure that if it is littered and your focus is making sure the impacts to marine environment is low, then maybe that has its place from a compostable point of view, or something that degrades down to the actual carbon, not microplastics, but through to the final carbon.
Yeah.
So I think that has its place. Whereas if you're going back now in curbside, it's all going to go through curbside. There's no real benefit there of having biodegradable materials, because it's all going to get caught up in the PET stream, or it's going to get caught up in the rigid. So I think it depends on where it's going to end up. Will help you determine whether that's suitable or not.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk around that at the moment. Like, even, I know this is going off the topic a bit, but the introduction of a FOGO bin.
Right.
And then, some councils are saying that they're going to give everyone a biodegradable bag to go in that. And so these are all...
Well, that's a good example of where it can be used, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's a particular thing. Those bags are specifically designed to be compostable. Perfect.
Yeah.
They're designed for that particular thing. But I think then the next step could be the FOGO could that include, for instance, compostable packaging? Because you've got, for instance, if people talk about compostable packaging, and often the conversation is often in the plastic space, but I think the conversation should be extended to the paper space. Think about something you buy from a takeaway food where you've got to serve a paper wrapper around a burger, and it's got cheese all over it and tomato sauce. Recyclers don't want that. Paper mills don't want that. Now, if you know that paper, because you've designed it this way at the start, hasn't got wax or hasn't got high wet strength chemicals in it, and it's just paper, then maybe it's suitable to go into compost.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point, really. I mean, you think about all the burger wrappers out there.
But even at home, you might get a lasagna, for instance. It might be you might get a punnet, like a paper punnet of strawberries that all go off and get mushy and impregnate into the paper.
Yeah.
Now, if you know that's just paper or bagasse or whatever, that's compostable. It doesn't go in your recycling bin. So sometimes this FOGO space, I think, could be used for packaging as well as food waste. Not just the bag that goes around the food waste, but potentially could go into that space. But the danger is, once again, education. How do we get to a point of being able to communicate to the consumer that this lasagna tray is suitable to go in FOGO, but this punnet over here is not, because it's got a plastic liner in it, and that will cause problems to the composter.
Yeah.
So now APCO is now going through the process of doing a project looking at whether or not the labelling scheme we're talking about here could be extended to include compostables, like working with the other organisations that are out there at the moment, but trying to merge this together. That's broadening the conversation, but it's taking it beyond compostable plastics to also work out, well, how should we manage food residue on paper products that could best be going into compost rather than landfill, as opposed to recycling and causing problems in the paper mill.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. I mean, just you think about that around the home. I mean, we've got some councils that have FOGO in at the moment, or organics recycling.
Mm.
It does open up a whole world of other opportunities.
Well, the other thing, Simon, is we talk about the FOGO in terms of compostable packaging maybe going through there. But even if that's not the case at the moment, councils don't allow that, apart from the bags that you're talking about before. But in the interim, I think that if you've got your home composting set up, food tainted paper products you can still put in there. Because even if it's got a plastic line, you'll know it because you can pull the plastic liner out. But you'll be able to work it out for yourself. And like the example of a pizza box, the top you might tear off and put in your recycling, goes to the paper mill. The bottom might have cheese all over it. And you think, okay, that's no good for recycling. Why don't I tear it up in little bits, put it in my compost or my worm farm, presto. And the thing is with home composting, people get turned off by the smell and the flies because it's not managed properly.
But you know what, I like being like growing up in the country. Like you just did that stuff anyway. You had your composting, you had your veggie garden. Yeah. Like to me it was like go out there, get messy, get dirty, grow some stuff, eat some stuff. Yeah. I mean,
but if you can see it through, as you've spoken is there, if you actually get the compost to the point of the end point, now it's value on your veggie garden.
Yeah, exactly.
Or your flower pots or whatever. If you're not getting any value from it because it's just a stinking mess, and you've got nowhere to put it, then you're not going to see it through, eh? But if you actually can see it through to a value commodity, then you'll put it in your worm farm or in your veggie patch and so on. Circular economy.
Yeah, there exactly. Yeah, in your own house. You're regenerating. You're growing. Growing up on that, I'm a big fan of growing your own stuff and doing the home composting. Even Big Josh, he's got his own little compost thing going on.
Is he? Right.
He loves it. So I'm a massive fan of that. Coming back to some of the packaging and like. I'm hearing some things, Anthony, with even some brands and groups starting to think about going to homogenised packaging. There's a little bit of talk of maybe like trying to phase out high impact polystyrene.
Yep.
Are you starting to see those kind of things? I mean, I'm not going to ask you to talk about specifics here, but Are you starting to see those things on the front end of the prep tool where brands are seriously looking at this?
Yeah, there's a few things there that's happening in that space. First of all, you've got discussions that are going on in Europe and the UK with RAP and different organisations. Secondly, you've got big brands making decisions themselves. So regardless of what the regulations are, big corporations are saying, I'm no longer going to use this, I'm not going to use this, and so on. So really, when it comes to them for the Australian New Zealand context of working out this framework for the prep and giving a decision on whatever it might be, we are not always leading things, we're responding to things. And we're responding to the recycling industry. But we're also responding to the brand owners who say, we think this is the right thing to do. So be bold and make the call. And that does give us that confidence to take. But what we do is we're right in the midst of it at the moment, by the way, these sorts of things, because some of the materials are problematic. And so what we're doing though is, there's a few things there. First of all, we consult the recycling industry to confirm that it is problematic and how widespread it is. But then we also then go back to the companies who are using the packaging to find out, are there alternatives?
Yeah.
So if you're going to move away from one polymer to another, there's not just cost to consider, but there's the setup of the whole packaging machinery. So whether it's a thermoformed or whether it's another film coming in, or they've got completely changing your whole makeup.
That is such an important thing to mention, because people don't understand. To change the packaging, it means changing the tooling.
Yes.
It'll mean changing could even changing the whole line.
Yeah, like the mold, for instance, and it might be one polymer under temperature might just stretch a little bit more, so you can't use the same thing, or the embossing that you're going to put on the side can't be. There's all these different variations, and that's what we're going to make sure we don't. Of course, we can't make bang decisions. It's trying to make sure we consult with those who are affected both at the packaging design and material selection stage, but also to consult with the recyclers to let them know, by the way, you're going to get a cleaner stream soon. What you've been talking about, it might take a number of months to get this through, and then we make the decision, and then we notify the members that the change has occurred, and then it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to, so we're not banning materials. All we're saying is that if we make a change to the prep, all it's saying is something on the pack might go from recyclable to not recyclable. It's not banning materials. It's just making sure that the consumer then knows that this goes in the rubbish bin, not in the recycling bin.
Yeah, I agree. I want to take you back to one of our first conversations, and we were talking about.
Were we drunk, or was you okay at the
I
time?
know, I think we're okay at the time.
Good.
But at one of our first conversations, mate, was around demand in the marketplace, and I have to be super careful about what I say here, but I actually really believe that to go and replace a lot of this virgin polymer, if you think maybe a brand might be using 10,000 tons of PET or HDPE, they've got to go and now complement that with 5,000 tons of recycled polymer.
Yep.
If their target's 50%, and some brands are obviously going for 70, 100%, whatever it is.
Yep.
I really think that the gap is going to be feeding.
I agree.
Feeding that supply to the brands to make
There's
that
a
change.
tsunami of demand coming. I believe. I agree with you. And that's the problem we've got. That for instance, Coke's made the decision recently to go 100% recycled content on 7 out of 10 of their bottles. But to achieve that, they're bringing in materials from overseas because we can't supply it locally. Now, we live in a globalised community. That's fine. And I think you're absolutely right there. But that provides the opportunity when COAG met a number of weeks back, and the announcement was made about no exports of materials. I shuddered when I thought of that. I think, hang on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it might come back to semantics, possibly about more the Basel Convention and actually a waste, as opposed to a resource. But still, it puts the onus on the local industry to step up and provide the supply to meet that demand.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what I kind of say to the ban of waste exports is, yes, we shouldn't be exporting waste, but I think like exporting commodities is fine.
That's fine.
What I think they should do is regulate that.
Yeah.
Because we do have that infrastructure gap, so we need to fill that need somewhere.
Yeah, but I think it's also the matching of supply to that demanding it. And Planet Ark is building this thing called the Circular Economy Hub. The federal government's given them $1.6 million to build it. And one element of that hub will be the information source and portals and case studies and so on. They're also building a marketplace to bring this together. And I think it's Jim from Downers, and he talks about, I asked for turkey, you give me chickens or something.
Yeah. Jim, he wants Christmas turkeys, not Christmas chickens.
That's
because
the thing.
He's trying to make a premium.
That's right. So if you're in the process of doing plastic recycling, if you can only get to a certain quality and you can only supply chickens, and then the person wants turkeys,
you're out of the game.
You're not even. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that means it comes back to saying, well, the investment has to be back here to say, how can I value add that? But it might be you're constricted by what you're getting. And that's why it started at the beginning. If we can get a clear stream from the brand owner, through the consumer, through to there, now you've got more chance of getting turkeys rather than chickens when you sell your resin to whoever needs it.
Yeah.
This whole thing, it's all working together. That's the potential. It's massive.
It is. So that's the one big takeaway. Yeah. Christmas is coming up.
Coming.
Let's get some Christmas turkeys on the table. I know Jim will be happy if he hears that. So. Hey, so what have you got coming up for the next few months? You are always busy, but what have you got happening in your world?
Yeah, look, I am pretty busy, Simon. Bitty, and also busy. I'm heading across to the UK on Saturday for a few months because I've got the prep in the UK, so I'm going to try and make that accurate for that market as well. And I've got this grand vision that I can get into Europe on the mainland. So I'm going to go across there and have a bit of a chat with a few people and see if they're interested. And I don't know, I'm just going to keep myself busy.
Yeah, well, man, that sounds pretty awesome. I think your addition of your tool, particularly, has been great here in Australia. I mean, just watching it come through, obviously with the backup of the label system and the rest of it, for everyone out there, I do think it's going to make an easier system to follow as a consumer, and as we try and transition to a better circular economy in Australia, it really is a key tool.
Sure, thanks for that.
Yeah, so mate, congratulations on it so far.
Yeah, well, there's a little video online on the website, so if anyone wants to check it out, they can just watch the video and see how it all works.
And it's on your website. What's your website?
Yeah, we've got one website. The APCO website is apco.prep.design.
Yep.
And there's also a company website, prep.design, that gives a bit more a broader thing about what we do. So
Okay, we'll get James to whip that up on the screen. Yeah. Now, one last question that I'm going to...
This is a tough question, is it?
This is the toughest question I'm going to ask you, right? So you have to be super prepared for it.
Go.
Mate, your trademark is those glasses, and for those that don't know about it, you got to tell them the story behind your glasses.
Okay, right. So these are made in Australia by a company called Dresden. They're made from 100% recycled plastic, and I learnt the story about these glasses, and they're fantastic. They pull plastics from the oceans and plastics from manufacturers and all sorts of places to build this stuff. Single design, so if it doesn't suit me, that's bad luck, Simon. I'm just wearing them.
I think it does suit you.
I do. Oh, good. That's why I want my blue shirt to show it off. But the blue used to be the plastic caps that go on beer kegs to all the pubs. So they get all the blue back and they produce the front bit. I understand the red used to be Lego, I don't know, sort of reject or something.
Oh, wow.
So I've now got Lego beer goggles, and I reckon they're pretty cool. And they're part of the circular economy because it's all about having a clean stream coming through to, like I was saying about the turkeys.
Yeah.
You can make stuff like this and make a business out of it at a high value if you get the clean stream coming through. And that's why, you're right, I'm using it a bit of it as part of my story.
It's awesome. So that wraps up the episode with Anthony. Thanks so much for joining us on Think Beginning Not End. We could go on for hours here, I know we could, but hopefully that gives everyone a bit of insight into what's happening behind the scenes and actually thinking about this whole recycling crisis at the beginning and where our packaging's made, and Anthony's a massive part of that. So thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome to catch up.
Yeah, all the best. Cheers.